In this talk, we will be taking a look at module federation, especially from a beginner's perspective. I'm Raj, and I'm currently working as an SWE intern at InVideo, and that is my Twitter handle right there. You can connect with me on Twitter. So first of all, let's take a look at what would we be covering in this talk. First of all, we'll start with understanding why something like module federation is even needed. We'll go over the idea of micro front-end architectures, what they are, and how they solve the problem of managing front-end applications at a large scale. Then we'll take a look at how module federation works. We would also be taking a look at two examples which demonstrate module federation. And lastly, we'll see what are some of the advantages of this new approach and whether it makes sense for your team to go for this approach. So, first of all, starting with the problems of managing front end apps at a large scale, meaning that you have a lot of code, a lot of features in your front end application. One approach for this would be something wherein the entire application is contained within a single repository, and that single repository would consist of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And in this case, production bundles would reach well into the megabytes, and working with such a code base would be very painful for many reasons. First would be that the builds that it will take a very long time. Something like hot reload would, or even live reload, would not at all be possible, and multiple teams would be contributing to the same repository and the same code base, which can very well lead into a very chaotic situation. So overall developer experience would also be bad. And then there are other issues, like if you make change to one part of the application, some other part of the application would just break and have some kind of unforeseen issues. So all this will prevent seamless and smooth addition of new features to your application. In an attempt to basically solve these issues, there is something called as the micro front-end architecture philosophy, which, if you think about it, is essentially like a conceptual extension of microservices to the front end. However, a big difference in this case is that the backend system, if you see, it's never actually consumed as a single thing, whereas in front end, parts are experienced as a whole. The whole front end is directly responsible for the whole user experience. So in order for a large monolithic application to scale to more and more features, it has to evolve into something which should have certain properties. Like, for example, the ability to independently develop, test, and deploy various parts of the application, the ability to add or remove or even replace specific parts of the application without needing to rebuild the whole thing, and finally the ability to create separate parts of the application using different technologies, different front end technologies. And these are the properties that are desired for a large scale front end application to scale to several more features and basically be maintainable for like a very long period of time. And these properties are actually what micro front end architecture is all about. These properties are what it aims to provide. And I mean, if we look at the evolution of web applications, we can clearly see that as the complexity of applications increased, the practice of building one monolithic backend applications kind of faded away, and microservices became slowly mainstream. So I would say that we can argue the same thing about front-end applications. As the complexity of front-end applications increases, there needs to be a better way of building them. Although from this diagram, one thing is clear: decoupling the code base is usually a very good idea. We don't want very monolithic code bases. We want more of a micro code bases which are decoupled for each other from each other. A simple reason for that is because decoupled code bases are just easier to change. They are also easier to learn, and in general, they are just easier to reason about. As a cherry on top, they also act as like a thick architectural boundaries, and of course, there is the added advantage of the ability to build each of the parts of the decoupled code bases independently from each other. And I would say that this is exactly what the micro front end architectural pattern or the micro front end architectural design aims for. And don't get me wrong, I mean, micro front end architecture has been around for a long time. But till now, there was no one standard way to implemented this kind of architecture design until Webpack 5 introduced module federation. Now, this module federation is what aims to solve the problem of sharing of modules at runtime, the problem of loading separately compiled, separately developed code. Module federation allows a JavaScript application to kind of dynamically import a part of a completely different application at runtime. So if you think about it, this means that you can implement different micro front ends, right? You can have different teams working on it. Those teams can then publish those micro front ends. And then at the end, you just load everything as needed. Module federation actually also tackles the problem of code dependency and the resulting increased bundle size by enabling something called as dependency sharing. So for example, if you are if you have a React application, and then using module federation you are loading another React component at runtime, then it won't import the React source twice. What module federation will do is that it will smartly use the React source you already have, and it will just download or it will just load the component code. So let's try to understand the terminology of module federation, and rather how it works, right? So the first important thing that you need to know, that we need to know regarding module federation, is that it defines two roles. The first one you can have is something called as the host, and the second role is called as the remote, right? So host is simply a Webpack build that is kind of initialized during the initial page load, right? Host is what loads all the initial chunks. It will boot the app in your browser, and it is responsible for rendering what the user is going to see first. And then we have remote. The remote's job is to expose the modules that can then be consumed by other hosts or even other remotes, so to speak. So both roles, so how do we define these roles, right? Let's talk in terms of code, or rather in terms of configuration. So as an example, let's consider this situation. We have an application, let's call it app1. In this scenario, app1 is going to act as a host, and app2 is going to act as a remote. So what this means is that app2 will kind of expose a certain component, a React component or whatever a component, and then app1 will import that component at runtime once it gets loaded, right? So how do we make this happen, right? So for this we need to use the module federation plugin and do some configuration. So this module federation plugin is what was introduced newly in Webpack 5. And now let's take a look at what configuration we need to do to get this thing working. Now, in the Webpack configuration of the host, right, we need to add this new module federation plugin. And in that, we have several options that we can configure. The first one is the name, where we specify the name of the current Webpack build that we are writing this code in. And then next, we kind of specify the remotes that the URLs of the remotes that we are going to load at later at runtime. Then after this, as I said, there is going to be dependency sharing which is going to happen. So we also specify which node modules, rather which packages we need to share with the remotes, or with the other remotes that we are going to consume. So this is what we need on the host side. Now let's take a look at on the remote side. Again, first we will need to specify the name, and then we specify the file name of the unique JavaScript entry file, which is going to be downloaded by other applications that are going to load this remote code, right? And after that, we need to specify which component we are exposing to the other hosts, right, from this remote, and the path where this component exists in the remote's code base. And finally, again, as I said, we need to specify the libraries that this remote wishes to share with the people, with the hosts that are going to consume this remote, and also the versions that this remote needs, right? Now we need to get this remote entry file, which is basically the entry file for the remote, in the host, right? The host needs to know where it is and how to load it. So we can do this by specifying inside the host's HTML's head element using script tags. And once this is done, what is going to happen is now the host knows how to find the remote and how to fetch it. All right. So again, coming back to the diagram we saw, the scenario we are having, right now we have configured app1 with remote as app2. We have given the URL, and then we have configured app2 to expose its this component which is called my component, and we have also specified the path to that my component. Okay. Now, one interesting thing that we can do in app1 is something like this. We can say that I want to import this my component from app2, right? Now, keep in mind, there is no such thing as app2 for host, right? Because app2 is going to be remote and which is going to be discovered at runtime. So what this is going to do behind the scenes is it will use this remote map to kind of grab the URL of the app2 that we are talking about. Then once it has done that, it will grab the exposed component and it will fill it in the code of host, right? So essentially we are getting access, we are loading something which has been deployed and developed completely separately. So that is what module federation is essentially all about, right? So let's just take a look at a simple demo of this. uh, okay, so we are going to be looking at two demos. The first code base is very simple. Uh, we have these two apps called app1 and app2, and now app1 and app2 right now exist in the same repository. That is just for demonstration purposes. You can have app1 and app2 in completely separate repositories, however you want it. And now let's take a look at app1 first, right? We'll go to the webpack configuration. So these two, both of them, app1 and app2, they are applications created using React, and they don't use any kind of bootstrapping tool. Like they are not created using create react app CRA. They have been configured manually using webpack configuration. So here you can see this is boilerplate webpack configuration that we always use. We are using Babel loader. Okay, all right. So this is the thing which is new. What we are doing is we are adding this plugin called Module Federation plugin. As we saw, we're specifying the name, right? Then we are specifying. Okay, so here you can see that app1 is exposing this component called app1 component, and it also has remotes. So what this means is app1 is kind of acting like both as a host as well as a remote. So as a remote, it is exposing its app1 component to whichever host might need it later on. And as a host, it is specifying that it is going to need app2. It is going to load something from app2 at runtime, and then we are specifying what we want to share. We'll take a look at what this singleton means later on. And all right, so what is app1 component? If you go to public and app, so app1 component essentially just says hello from app1, that's it. And then in this index.js, you can see we are importing bootstrap.js, and coming here, if you see, we are doing react-dom.render this app component, which as we saw is essentially hello from app1. And then we are also rendering app2 component. And if you see here, we are importing that from app2 slash app2 component. And this does not know what app2 is at compile time or at even build time. This is going to happen at runtime. So let's take a look at app2. If we go here, webpack config, again the same boilerplate one. And in the module federation plugin, we are specifying the name. And over here, if you see, we are not specifying. So this app2 is going to act as a pure remote. It is not consuming anything. from anyone else, right? It is just exposing this component called app2 component. And if you go into src app of app2, you'll see that this is saying hello from app2. So this is what we have. And currently on my local machine, I have app1 running on port 3001, and I have app2 running on 3002. Now, how have I connected these two apps, right? So if you see in app1 index.html, I have this script src where I have specified the remote entry.js file of app2. All right. So if we go into a demo of this, right? If we load this, you can see that we can see hello from app1 and hello from app2. So hello from app1 is our the component which is owned by app1, and hello from app2 is something which is loaded at runtime, right? So if we take a look at the network tab here, okay, and then we just reload this, we can see that there is a call being made to remote entry.js. I'll just filter it so that I can only see request to 3002, which is our remote. So you can see what is happening is we are loading the remote entry.js file first, which is essentially the entry point to our remote. And now when we load a particular component, when we are importing a particular component from app2, then it essentially starts downloading the chunks that are needed for that particular component, which in this case is 694 and 294.js. They're 100 bytes chunks which are needed to display this hello from app2. So that is a simple demo of how a very simple demo of how you can use module federation. And I mean, like right now it's just simple two components, hello from app2 and hello from app1. In reality they can be anything, they can have their own state, they can have their own business logic, whatever is needed, and they can be developed in deployed independently. But you would observe that I have in this demo, I have used manual, basically a React app which is bootstrapped manually. I haven't used something CRA or something like that. So what if, I mean, in real life, you would generally find that applications would be bootstrapped using CRA. So how can we implement module federation there? So I have a demo ready for that as well. So let's take a look. Again, I have just copied the app2 component from there over here. If you see webpack.config, again, this is just, it exposes this app2 component, which is called hello from app2. And again, this is boilerplate webpack configuration that we saw earlier. And it is saying that I want to share all these two libraries with the host, which is going to consume me later on. So that is first package. The second package is called something CRA, right? And this is a React application bootstrapped using Create React App. Now, as we know, Create React App kind of abstracts away the Webpack configuration from us, right? It does not allow us to do changes directly. So for making those changes, we can use something like Krakow, which is Create React App configuration override. You can simply add install the package using npm install or yarn add, and just replace React scripts with Krakow in your package.json. So in this krakow.config.js, we are going to specify the new webpack configuration that we need to make module federation working. So over here, if you see, what we are saying is this webpack config is going to be CRA's webpack config. And in that, we are going to have webpack.plugins, which will be an array. We are going to say that I'm going to need everything that CRA gives me, right? And I just want to add one more thing, which is this new module federation plugin. And over here, again, same thing. We are specifying the configuration that we need. This CRA application again is going to act both as a remote as well as a host. It is going to act as a host because it will load this app2 remote module, and it is going to act as a remote because it is exposing the CRA component for anyone else which would like to consume this. So if you see here, I'm just exposing app.js, and app.js again is very simple, hello from CRA. And the way it is connected again is index.html. You just add script src. That's it. So again, if you see here, I have CRA running on 3000 and app2 is running on 3002. So let's see a demo of that as well, right? So if I reload this, you can see that, I have this hello from CRA and hello from app2. Again, I'm using very simple components, but in reality, it can be anything you want. Now, one more thing that we can do is we can do something like we have this remote component, and then we can use react.suspense to lazily load this remote component. Like for example, I have this bootstrap.lazy. In this, what I'm doing is importing this using react.lazy, and I'll have till it is loaded, I'll be showing this particular fallback component called loading. So we can do things like that as well. All right. So one thing you might have noticed is basically in this case, we are specifying remote URLs in the host config. I mean, we are kind of hard coding this URLs. I mean, we can definitely do all of this dynamically, where we'll have another service which will be responsible for maintaining like a remote map of different applications we have. And instead of the need to hard code it, we'll just query that to get the information about what all remotes are available. All right. Now, moving ahead, we have seen that sharing dependencies is a big thing in module federation because you'll be importing components from different applications, and all those applications will have their own set of dependencies. It's very important that dependencies are shared whenever possible so as to keep your bundle sizes under control. But what if, like, imagine if you're sharing a library between two micro frontends, but both of them need a different version of the same library. So there is a version mismatch that is happening. So let's try to understand how module federation will behave in this scenario, right? So by default, module federation tries to respect the semantic versioning. It tries to negotiate the highest compatible version for each application involved. So for example, if there is version 10.0.0 on one side and 10.1.0 on other side, then the highest compatible version, which is 10.1.0, will be used. We can also specify a range of accepted versions. That is, we can say that, hey, I have tested these versions manually, and even though according to semver they are different, but I am saying that anything in this range is okay. So it will respect the range that we are giving, then according to that it will find the highest compatible one. Now, what if there is nothing like a highest compatible version, right? In that case, what happens is it will fall back to the old version. So one micro frontend might say it needs version 10, another needs version 11. Then in that case, each one will get its own version of what it needs, right? And the third option, which is what we saw, we can also mark a particular dependency as singleton, right? Where we are essentially saying that we only want specific version. And if there is not a thing like the highest compatible version, it will throw a warning or an error, right? For example, if you say strict version is true, it will give an error on mismatch of this example library. So, just a sec. Yeah. So let's take an example here. So let's say I have in the container application, something is called container app. In that, I have a dependency on example lib of version 5.0.0. App 1 needs 5.1.0 and app 2 needs 4.0.0. So in this scenario, what is going to happen is your container app and app 1 are going to share 5.1.0 because that is the highest compatible version with those two. And then app 2 will just fall back to its own version of 4.0.0. So this way, we can see that module federation is smartly negotiating what all libraries are needed, dependencies are needed, and it makes sure that they are shared as much as it is possible. All right. So at this point, we understand what module federation is, how it works, and how it is implemented. So let's see what are the advantages of having such an architecture, right? I would say the first and foremost advantage is that the individual pieces of your front-end application can now be built separately in isolation. So you can have separate teams working on each part, and these teams can completely own their respective part, right? From developing to testing to deployment. So this will also lead to each team having kind of an increased ownership of the part that they're responsible for, and would encourage autonomous teams. The next advantage would be that the different parts of the front end can be added or removed or even replaced without needing a whole application to rebuild, right? So if you're working on a large scale front end application, you might be familiar with the builds taking a very long time to completely process. Because of if you have a MF based architecture, you can just update one part without even needing to rebuild or even deploy the other part. Micro frontends will need only micro changes. Further, these separate parts can be then created using completely different technologies. So one part might use Angular, other part might use React, and these two parts can actually live in the same view. And the next, there is also kind of an organizational benefit, wherein many more team splits are possible, with each team kind of being responsible for their own module. This might also lead to kind of a creation of smaller and full stack teams, if you have something like microservices based architecture in the back end as well. So okay, so these are all the advantages, but does that mean that you should go for module federation and you should rewrite everything into module federation, right? So here's a rough checklist of whether module federation will kind of make sense for you. Okay, so at the end of the day, module federation is, or even micro frontends are all about decoupling. They start to make sense when your application reaches a certain size, right? And you can see in this checklist, the first thing would be that multiple teams are contributing to your ever growing front end application. It is getting difficult to manage the scale of your continuously increasing features, right? The developer experience is getting worse, because things like very slow local rebuilds are happening. But at the same time, the feature set of your front end UI is continuously growing, and that growth should happen without impacting the rest of the system. So next one would be different parts of your UI need to be activated or rolled out independently from each other. And finally, you want to enable different teams to use their own tooling and technology. So whatever is best for that particular team to solve that particular problem, they should be able to use that, regardless of what other parts of the front end, what technologies they're using. I would say that if this is the scenario, if this resonates with you, then micro front-end based approach using module federation will make the most sense, and it will have a lot of advantages for you. So finally, these are some of the issues you might face when you are using module federation. First, and I mean the most prominent one right now, is using something that does not support Webpack 5 completely, yet might be a bit challenging. A best example is Storybook. Implementing Storybook is kind of difficult thing to do right now with let's say a CRA that is using Webpack 5. Hopefully, it will get better soon, but right now you'll have to resort some kind of a tricks and hacks to get it to work. And the next thing is when you're developing two different applications, two different micro front ends, and you want something like live reloading. So when you make changes to the second application, the first application should kind of reload. This thing, it's not kind of supported out of the box, but you can easily make it happen using the configuration in Webpack Dev Server. If you face the same issue, I have a separate blog post on that, which you might be interested in checking out. Lastly, you might face some versioning issues, with unexpected versions being used and version conflicts happening. Such errors are actually documented, and you can find the solution of them on Stack Overflow, or even there are even a few Medium posts documenting some of the most common errors when one starts with module federation. For this issue, it's also important that you understand how module federation deals with version mismatches, which is something that we just saw. So yes, in conclusion, what we saw what micro front-end architectures are, what do they bring to the table. Then we saw what module federation is, how it works, what it is, and why would someone use it. We also saw how it handles version mismatches in shared dependencies, and lastly, some of the issues that you might run into when getting started with module federation. So lastly, with module federation, we finally have the right and the standard way to implement the micro front end architectural pattern, and I'm really excited to see how it becomes more mainstream and different things that it makes possible. And with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you so much for listening.